first one from my end on dietary issues, because food security is a really important thing. Please, if you have any special dietary requirements, just come and whisper to me here before 12, so that for lunch you are sorted. Please, it's important. I think we have just had issues and the kitchen is getting really upset. So they want to make sure that for lunch they have the right orders. Please, thank you.
Good morning. Bonjour. Bom dia. Está bom, obrigado. Are we ready to start? Let me welcome those who are attending virtually, 145 participants from all over the world. In this session, I will allow the virtual participants to pose some questions. Please put your questions on the chat box and we will read some of your questions during the discussion session. We have a panel of very experienced speakers. Some of their CVs deserve to be in the encyclopedia. One of which worked for Visa, used to work for Visa, and we can negotiate for my visa to be unblocked. Anyway, my name is Katuchelon Nepawe. I am the board chairperson at the South African Council for Natural Scientific Professions. Perhaps most of the participants may not be cognizant of our organization because we are a national organization. In short, we are called SACNASP. We are the registration and regulation authority for the natural science professions in the Republic of South Africa. Our work focuses on 5 key areas at a very high level. First, we do registrations of all natural scientists in the country, covering 26 fields of practice, supported by 47 voluntary associations. We have about 16,000 registered scientists, most of which are in the areas of agricultural sciences like yourselves, water sciences, geospatial sciences, amongst others. We also regulate the registered scientists to ensure we have got an ethical scientific workforce. They abide by a code of conduct and ethics. In terms of our transformation agenda, it's very interesting today and yesterday. There was a lot of debate about inclusivity. I have learned some few definitions of inclusivity today, one of which was, who is being excluded and why? Another definition emanated from the previous session, whereby the norms about the perception that women are being excluded and disempowered is perhaps needs to be debated. But in the context of inclusivity in South Africa, we talk about 3 dimensions: women, youth, and people with disability. We have got flagship programs in this area whereby we have lifelong learning programs to capacitate women and youth in particular. These are the continuing professional development program and the candidate mentoring program. One of our mandate is advisory. We do advise our government and relevant stakeholders. We produce reports to inform policy for decision making. Interesting, we are busy with a report now which will focus on the skills required for the future natural scientist amid grand societal challenges, including climate change. Lastly, we do a lot of science engagements and communication activities similar to this one. One that comes to mind, we had a very successful workshop last year dealing with climate change, and mitigation and adaptation strategies. In this area, we are trying to take science and showcase science to the society. We believe that addressing capacity gaps in transforming smallholder farmers in Sub-Saharan Africa will require a comprehensive approach from both demand and supply side of skills development. I'll introduce the key speaker. Perhaps you can also give, before you make a presentation, just a very high level, better representation of your credentials. The first speaker is Mr. Mamadou Biteya, Executive Secretary, Africa Capacity Building Foundation, ACBF. I believe you know you are provided with 10 to 15 minutes, but given that one of our panelists is not here, perhaps I'll give you extra 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm extremely pleased to be here today, and I would like to express my thanks and gratitude to FANAPAN, or FANPAN, I don't know how best to pronounce that, for inviting us to participate, contribute in this very important dialogue. The African Capacity Building Foundation, for those of you who are not familiar with the institution, is a Pan-African institution that was created 32 years ago by 12 African states, with the support of the World Bank, the African Development Bank, UNDP, to support human capacity development, skills, but also to support institutional capacity building to deliver development in Africa. 32 years later, the institution boasts 40 African states in its membership, and also has become, in 2017, a specialized agency for capacity building of the African Union. It doesn't make the institution a member or a part of the African Union, but it gives this institution the status and the possibility to speak on behalf of the African Union on matters relating to capacity building. So today I've been asked to provide some thoughts on capacity gaps for transforming smallholder farmers in Sub-Saharan Africa through capacity building, and really in the context of the thematic of climate-smart agriculture. So, is this not okay? Am I pushing the right button? Okay. Okay, you can click for me. Thank you very much. So today I will be focusing on really two major themes. I think that the first one, I will go very, very quickly on it, which was really understanding the context, because I'm speaking here to eminent scientists and practitioners and also will be focusing more on how we could bridge the gap. Next, please, slide. So in terms of the context, I think that it was largely discussed yesterday, particularly around climate change and its impact. So weather events, variability of rain, season shifts, etc. So, but the key word here is actually the high dependency on rain-fed agriculture. Next. Maybe I can do that from here.
Just press hard this button forward.
Oh, press hard.
Yeah, for forward.
Okay, I will try.
This one, yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So I believe that also the challenges are very much known. The high susceptibility to climate change. Also, the big issue, I think that the director of WFP spoke about them yesterday, which is really about the basics, the unaffordability of agricultural inputs, fertilizers, low yields, which are really the basics. Everything that we can talk about, if some of those basics are not fixed, actually investing into resilience is going to be extremely difficult. Because remember, really, resilience and the resilience dividend is what you harvest by investing already in your production to generate surplus that allows you to actually cushion against future shocks. So today, the average yields are extremely low and combined with food loss, particularly we know that in Africa in general, 30% of everything produced is lost due to inefficiencies, and all of that is preventing most smallholder farmers and also the small small land that being cropped. Actually, all of that puts a pressure on productivity and wealth creation and generating excess revenue that allows to actually invest and save for future shocks. So also the socioeconomic challenges are very well known, infrastructure inadequate. When we talk about irrigation, feeder roads, and different other facilities, equipment that also play into food loss. Mechanization, still a challenge, talking about productivity, and land tenure systems also being a big problem. And also the land cannot even be used to unlock financing and credit. I must say that even in many countries in Sub-Saharan Africa, one of the biggest problems for conflict in the near future may be related to land tenure systems. So low investment and the others. So if you look at the capacity gaps, you can really look at them. These are about 6 areas, but probably more. But some of the most, to me, actually important, critical technical skills. Today, or over the past couple of decades, we have seen actually the fall of extension services, once provided by government in many countries today, and following the structural adjustments, less investment in building capacity and knowledge of smallholder farmers has decimated really public extension services. So extremely important around technical skills really cropping techniques and innovation in agriculture. And that relates really to knowledge and knowledge generation, more research, appropriate research as well, which means also more increased investment in our think tanks. And I think that technology, we talked about it, but adapted and adequate technology is which actually is adequate for the farm size that we see. Most smallholder farmers use is extremely important to innovate there. Infrastructure, I talked about food loss and others, access to market, transportation and all of that, extremely important. Finance, obviously, is critical, and climate change adaptation, as well as really key areas where we see capacity gaps. So to bridge that, a couple of things need to be done. I mentioned some of them already, how we can develop more the critical technical skills, not only looking at the public sector, but also banking or empowering young innovators and the private sector as well, looking at really technical knowledge and technical skills as an investment for a farmer, to acquire them, to be able to do a better job, I think will be really critical. And also leveraging technology, particularly digital, to provide that. When today mobile technology has largely penetrated our rural areas in the hands of almost every farmer, you have what I would call a book in the mobile, where videos, audios, and other types of mediums to provide those skills are available. Invest in research. Today, ACBF supports a network of 60 think tanks in Africa that have been created to generate knowledge and insights to support evidence-based policy making in different sectors. And today, one of the biggest challenges that we see with these think tanks is the issue of their own financial sustainability. Most of the think tanks actually are living from year to year, trying to generate the resources to retain employees, to pay salaries. So very little remains for investment in actual research. But I think also that one of the things to address there is how do you make research from these think tanks to be demand-driven, and to look at also other new users who are able also to pay for this. Capacity strengthening for institutions, absolutely important. When just the example I just gave about think tanks, worrying about their financial sustainability, take any agricultural company or enterprise. When you are struggling with that, you are not able to focus on what you should be doing best, which is really providing the production, whether it is knowledge production or actually food that you produce. So really looking at institutional capacity, from governance to operations to talent to fundraising, communication, different sections, so that they work well and they can focus on their main business is extremely important. So predictable, structured and well-coordinated capacity building funds. Today, one of the last month, 6th to 10th February, we at ACBF convened a number of donors, multilateral, bilateral, foundations, etc., to have one conversation, is to see that despite the amounts being invested in capacity building, we are not seeing the results that we want to see. So there is some failure somewhere because there is a lot of duplications. Donors are uncoordinated. Actors of capacity building on the on the field are also uncoordinated. So it is extremely important actually to get all that together and have common vision, common objectives where everyone puts their efforts in a coordinated way, combining collective knowledge, resources in many ways, whether it is our influence, whether it's technical capacity, etc., to hope to be able to make a dent in the issues that we are dealing with. Okay, I need to press harder. Okay. Will this work? Still stuck? Okay, there we go. It's moving. Sorry about this. So I wanted to say that the good news is that actually really there is a favorable environment right now. I think that we've really had a big wake-up call with COVID. COVID has really... Okay, so COVID has really unveiled our vulnerability in terms of food supply. Further, with the war in Europe, we have seen a continent with more than half of the arable land, the most youthful population, and the endowment in terms of water actually depending for its food self-sufficiency on 2 countries. So I think that this has created consciousness within our political leaders, and I think that it is an opportunity. Our demographic dividend is also extremely important. And today, also, especially when we talk about climate-smart agriculture, new financing vehicles are being unveiled. For instance, the green bonds and others are actually availing resources that are intended to invest in adaptation to climate change. However, one of the biggest challenges is capacity to develop bankable projects. When we speak to those big trusts such as GCF or JEF or etc., or even the African Development Bank, which issued several green bonds, the latest being actually issued here in South Africa, in Rennes. Actually, one of the biggest challenges that they have is having a pipeline of investable projects. So capacity really to develop projects is extremely important. AFCFTA is also another opportunity. This will allow actually to remove the barriers for moving products between from country to country. However, there will be need to actually domesticate and implement those trade instruments. And obviously, we are seeing more supportive policy frameworks as well, providing the opportunity. So, despite the challenges, we are seeing real opportunities. If actually, okay, I'm really having a challenge with this. Sorry, that's okay. Can you help move, Tano? Thank you so much. And also, you can say this is also part of it. We have the framework to do that, this supportive policy framework that I talked about. I'm not going to talk about this a lot because you all are familiar with these policy frameworks, whether it is the Agenda 2063, which prioritizes agriculture, as well Agenda 2030, Malabo Declaration, although since 2003, when the country is committed to allocate, that's Maputo actually, to allocate 10% of their budgets to agriculture. We have seen very few do that, but it is still something that policy dialogues like this actually can help in moving that. The CADEP and also the Malabo Declaration, I think all of that. The other thing is the nationally determined contributions for climate adaptation are also there. What we are seeing is that most countries have these NDCs, but really transforming those NDCs into real projects that actually can be implemented seems to be a real challenge as well. But it is an opportunity because it is a framework that is there that can, if done well with the right capacities, can actually unlock financing to invest in that. Okay, I think we are going back. Dano? Yes. So basically, I'm going to go very quickly around what needs to be done or where we could really get to. If we really had public and private sector partnership is going to be extremely important. And this also exists in terms of land as well. We're seeing in Sub-Saharan Africa many big corporates coming from the Gulf, coming from the north, actually, coming and taking huge land and producing to export to their countries. I think that the right types of policy should be creating those partnerships whereby smallholder farmers can work with these companies. They don't need to acquire land, but with the right arrangements with the smallholder farmers, they can be aggregated, capacitated, their skills built, actually, and they can produce resilient agriculture value chains, looking at the whole value chain, and also bringing technology, financial institutions have to be there, etc. And finally, also using really the financial instruments that actually exist. And not just looking at credit, but looking at different types of other financial instruments, whether it is guarantees, grants, equity, and others. For instance, I always say, when I'm moving from house to house and I have to transport my goods to the new house, do I need to buy a truck to be able to do that? Or do I just rent a truck for the few hours that I need it? So what you really need is not, smallholder farmers need, is not to own equipment, but to have access for the use of those equipments at the right moment. And there are actually financial instruments that can allow that. So it needs a little bit more thinking and innovation around that. Next one. I just wanted to speak very quickly about what ACBF is doing in this space. And we are really looking at how we support women-led, youth-led, women-owned, youth-owned, 5 minutes, okay, to agricultural or companies, SMEs in the agricultural sector. We are here targeting high potential, not greenfield, but those established SMEs that actually are in a position actually to move to the next stage. And we supporting also intentionally those groups because they are the ones that are traditionally marginalized. Around building their resilience and sustainability, we provide to them seed grants to either do the studies or develop projects or whatever they need actually to be able to present bankable projects into financial institutions. We create networks through which actually we can provide the capacity, but also for those networks also to advance and advocate on behalf of those SMEs. And linking farmers to potential funders is also what we do. And we are providing very basic skills to these SMEs, whether it is we do training, coaching, mentorship, peer learning and exchanges, and also we provide knowledge in accessible databases, and this knowledge actually coming from the research conducted by our think tanks. Next. We also have another project supported by Bill and Melinda. The previous project I just talked about is supported by the BADEA, the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa. And this project is supported by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is really about building, strengthening leadership capacities for African organizations active in climate adaptation. So what we do is select organizations that actually are really moving the needle and looking at how we can support these organizations to be more influential and to be able to achieve their objectives. Finally, the way we do that is also, and this is available to any entity, is to conduct a capacity needs assessment, and through that capacity needs assessment is to provide a capacity development plan, which is really based on the identified weaknesses and actually do the skills enhancement. It's just like when you go to a doctor, they do the diagnostic, write the prescription, and you can go to any pharmacy. By the way, we can do the capacity needs assessment, develop the capacity building plan, but you don't have to work with ACBF for the implementation of it. You can go to any other organization. So that's what we do around really building, not working directly with smallholder farmers, but building the capacities of organizations that work with them. And finally, I believe this is my last slide to come. Yeah, so these are just what we do through our new strategy, because we have just developed our strategy for the period 2023, 2025, and 2027, the 5-year plan. And one of the pillars is really agribusiness and food sovereignty, where we focus on two things. One is really developing, supporting governments for sector reforms that are required actually to attract more private sector investment. And the second one is really about value addition and access to market. But really you could say capacities for small industrialization. And this will augment value, reduce food loss, and actually put more money in the pocket of the farmer. Next slide. So one before. Yeah. So what could be really different? And I think that one key thing is really about collaborations. The issues that we are dealing with are actually bigger than any one single organization. So scaling collaboration is going to be extremely important to avoid duplication and actually have the value. So we are talking to governments, to donors, so that they can understand, because right now how agriculture is being funded does not support building capacity over time. Capacities is not something you invest in today and you get the results the next day. It's a process. It's a long process that is acquired over time, so it requires patient capital. So I would urge you in any of your engagements, advocacy, I think it will be really important to raise the attention to this. Obviously, if you do something for me, without me, is against me. So involving farmers at the heart of anything we do in terms of capacity building, understanding their perspective, not what we think they lack, but what they think and know actually they lack is going to be very important in building capacity building programs. And obviously, not supporting one aspect and leaving the others, looking everything in a value chain view, in a comprehensive view, was said by the first speaker, and actually not underestimate, not focusing just in the agriculture sector, but looking at all the other sectors. Because I always say that capacity is not about capacitating one actor. Because when you capacitate one actor, you create an unbalance in the conversation. And what happens is what I call the discussion of the deaf, or the conversation of the deaf. So you need to build capacity of an ecosystem of actors so that you have balanced power, balanced knowledge, which is conducive to really prolific conversation. I thank you for your attention.
Let's give him another hand of applause. The keynote gave very good foundation in terms of the topic, in terms of transforming smallholder farmers through capacity development. Our 5 panelists will provide related experiences on the topic. We'll start with Dr. Martin Moyo, the country representative, climate adaptation and mitigation senior scientist, ICRISAT, Zimbabwe.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair. And I'll present on the role of using agricultural innovation platforms to transition small-scale irrigation systems towards complex adaptive systems. My presentation is going to probably start off from where my colleagues presented yesterday on how the TISA project has been run across the 3 countries. Macarius presented on what has been done in Tanzania. Wilson also presented on what has been done in Mozambique. And Jamie initially gave an overview of what the project had done across the 3 countries. My experiences would mainly focus around what we've done in Zimbabwe. And one of the critical issues that has also been raised by Mr. Biete here relates to the main challenges which are faced across smallholder farming systems in Africa. I think Mr. Biete really highlighted that we have institutional issues, we have technical issues, we have finance issues and market-related linkages that really constrain smallholder farming systems in Africa. And within irrigation systems, I think yesterday we were shown that we've had more of failures than successes. Why do we have more failures than successes within smallholder irrigation schemes? There is quite a number of issues, but the main issue relates to the solutions we always proffer to irrigation development. I know he mentioned the issue of us having more infrastructure. It's one of the solutions that we always pushing forward within irrigation development. The solutions usually focus around technologies for increasing yields as well as rebuilding infrastructure. But we are saying smallholder irrigation schemes failure is not solely a water or infrastructure engineering challenge. The challenges, as already highlighted, span across policy, environmental, social, financial, as well as technical barriers. And all along, you'd note that we're trying to address system breakdown with new technology and hardware alone, which to us as the TISA project, we believe has been a misdiagnosis of the problem, because there is definitely a mix of institutional as well as market and infrastructure and production solutions that we have to be looking at. We really need a holistic approach to the irrigation challenge. So we have asked ourselves a question. Up one slide, please. We have asked ourselves a question. Can the AIP process be able to facilitate the institutional arrangements and associated information flows that will increase the performance of irrigation systems. As already highlighted, smallholder irrigation systems are influenced by complex and interrelated factors, which have characteristics of what Andre described as complex socio-ecological systems. So we've got different actors within the irrigation sector, and most of these are operating as individual entities. So we need a holistic approach. We are still on the question. We need a holistic approach that we believe the agriculture innovation platform process brings in. So now you can move forward. So what does the innovation platform really bring to the table? One, it really facilitates communication and coordination of all players within the irrigation sector. The value of the AIP, from our experience, is that it's inclusive in nature. Of stakeholders that represent the traditional, that's inclusive of the engineers, the irrigation management committees, as well as the water authorities, as well as the non-traditional stakeholders, the rest of the value chain players, which is something that's really done within irrigation development. And we've noted that the AIP is multidisciplinary in nature, and it does establish cognitive capacity, increasing the capacity to analyze and solve technical issues at local level. I think one of the critical questions that was asked by Prof earlier on was, the locals willing partners in all this? Our experiences from Zimbabwe would say yes. We do not have to impose our thinking or thought process to them, and I'll come to that, how the thought process was established to make it really valued at local level. So what have been our experiences with the AIPs in transitioning irrigation schemes towards complex adaptive systems? So specifically at Slalachan irrigation scheme, I'm sure most of you now know about this irrigation scheme. I think our director has to make sure that this irrigation scheme is really out there in the map. Bezo, this is a challenge for you. As we're moving back to Zimbabwe, please make sure that the irrigation scheme is well known. Yeah. So one of the critical issues that the AIP really came up with was identification of the main constraints as well as the opportunities within the irrigation system. And it also identified the key and relevant stakeholders that could really help in dealing with the identified constraints. And we used a root cause analysis issue to try to understand the why questions, which really clarified the root causes of some of the issues. So initially, what we had noted was that key stakeholders were operating as separate entities or subsystems. And the AIP therefore served as a catalyst, bringing all these various stakeholders and organizations together into an informal network. And it basically allowed the stakeholders to come up with locally relevant solutions. The stakeholders were mainly made up of the locals themselves. The outsiders were probably the value chain players. It allowed the locally relevant solutions to be developed by the local players, including technical stakeholders. And it also served to develop the local capacity to solve our problems. And what you've noted in terms of the smart water management tools, the Chameleon and Full Stop, in Zimbabwe, these were introduced in the context of the AIP. And as we go further along, I would want to highlight what really brought in the locals to own the process. One of the key issues within the AIP process that has allowed for the creation of opportunities for self-organization within the system has been the visioning exercise. This one has been very important, where we've been able to develop rich pictures of the current situation and the desired future state of the system. Taken together, the pictures of the current situation and the vision really gave a general overview of what was needed to be done. And it illustrated the interconnected nature of the many challenges small-scale irrigation schemes face and placed them in the context of the larger system. So it also depicted that there is quite a number of constraints and there is quite a number of opportunities and steps to be taken by the locals to be able to reach the desired state. So as we move along, as we may be aware, irrigation schemes cannot really be maintained unless the farming system is profitable. So one of the key issues the AIP process worked on was changing the goal of the system and the paradigm on which the system is based on, which is a very effective entry point to achieve impact. So what we had noted was that many challenges faced by small-scale irrigation schemes reside in us trying to transition from subsistence irrigated agriculture towards market-oriented production systems, as well as the institutional changes that are required to facilitate this transition. So in this regard, the AIP was found to be very relevant in the introduction of high-value crops, such as garlic, such as pepper, maize seed, and market linkages for the same. So the role of the market should not be understated within smallholder irrigation systems. For profitable farming to happen, we need market linkages, which will in turn also lead to investments back into irrigation infrastructure. So this is very key aspect that the AIP process came up with. And then I would want to address some of the key issues that the AIP worked on. So the AIP in Zimbabwe proved to address some of the major stumbling blocks within the irrigation systems. I've got two critical examples that I would want to highlight. So including institutions such as the water and local government authorities who have a greater control over the systems to become part of the multi-directional information sharing and innovation process was very important to us. The Irrigation Management Committee at Slalatani owed the local water authority about $280,000 US, which was a result of many years of underpayment, the multi-digit inflation, as well as the changes in currency in Zimbabwe. So through ZINWA's understanding, ZINWA being part of the AIP, they subsequently reduced the bill and unblocked the system and allowed farming to carry on. Another example relates to the fact that occupancy at the scheme was very low. And as you understand, land tenure in Zimbabwe is very contentious. So touching that proved to be very difficult for the project. But through the project and through the relevant authorities, we were able to touch the subject. And the district council engaged in a land audit and confirmed access to and reallocated unused plots. So this was very important for the AIP as achievements. And my last slide is just on some summary thoughts that I believe I should be able to share. That technical fixes alone will not work as irrigation systems are part of a complex system. So we really need a holistic approach and several simultaneous interventions to overcome the challenges within smallholder irrigation systems. And I would say agricultural innovation platforms do continuously guide dialogue between agriculture value chain stakeholders, which is important in making sure that farmers align their operations to the demands of the market. The market is supposed to drive the system. So this is what I had to share. Thank you.
Let's give him another strong hand of applause. Our next speaker, Ms. Wendy Peterson, is the Executive Manager at South African Wine Industry Transformation Unit. Let me first request those who are attending virtually, please keep your mics on mute, but continue to post your questions on the chat box. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. Very warm welcome. I just want to take the opportunity to thank the department, the NMC, the FAN for inviting us, the wine industry, to be included into this amazing conference and dialogue. Sometimes the wine industry is excluded because they don't see us as agriculture. So I'm glad that that narrative is changing. And then to my colleagues in the audience, I just want to say thank you for delivering your messages. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my colleagues from Vinpro, from WineTech, from the Wine MS that forms a big part of the work that we do in transformation. So starting off, just a little bit of an introduction to myself. Wendy Peterson, I'm the Executive Manager for the Wine Industry Transformation Unit. I've been appointed in 2019. I've got a food technology background with a strong marketing degree, and then also moving into strategy, specifically transformation strategy. So I think that I've got just enough knowledge, not for my PhD, but for a PhD in experience. I've been 3 years in the industry, so I think I've got a fair sense of the entire value chain of the wine industry, from primary, secondary, tertiary production. So getting into the subject, creating a conducive environment for transformative sustainable growth. Will you go on? Just to put it in perspective of how our organization exists. So we are basically funded by statutory levy that's imposed by national onto the industry. And that money, that funds, is allocated back into the industry to promote and to better the industry. So 20% of those funds, the statutory levy, is ring-fenced for transformation. And transformation in the sense of small farmer development. We've also got very brand owners, people that owns brands and are qualified in winemaking, viticulture, and then right through to skills development and social development. So I think when our speakers talked, we talked about the whole ecosystem of transformation being in balance. I think the work that we do ensures that every aspect of transformation, from commercial growth, farmer growth, skills development, social development, are aligned to achieve inclusive transformation. So in 2019, we looked at our strategy. There was a target imposed on us to say 20% of growth and land reform by 2025. And I don't know about you guys, but that seemed very high to me. So we developed a new strategy in 2019. It was signed off in 2020. And we said, with the limited funds that we've got, we have to be realistic of exactly what we can achieve. I think sometimes in transformation, there are very high expectations. There are very high targets, but and when we come to the end where we need to evaluate ourselves, we find ourselves not delivering. And my feeling is that the targets are too high of what can actually be achieved with the amount of money we've got. So we looked at our pot of money, and we said that with that pool of money, we can achieve, look at, and it's sometimes we play a custodian role. We say that we will inherit the project and we will drive the project. In other times, we say that we play an enabling role in forming networks and connections so that this can be possible. And in other times, we just play a team role, or a team player role. The issues that, or the areas that we said we will focus on is equitable access to land with water rights, acquiring manufacturing assets and facilities. We also said market access for our brands, and I will give you a little bit of an introduction into the brands and what that means. Market access so that they can have obviously opportunities for volume growth, value growth, market share. We also said we need to look at water rights, because sometimes land is given, but where's the water rights? Agriculture cannot prosper on land that hasn't got any water rights. So when we look at transformation initiatives, the water needs to be a key deliverable in that transferring of land. In a big thing that's not written in the MAP Act, and I think this is a policy thing that we have to address, in the wine industry, we sell wine to various markets, but some of the wine brand owners has got wine estates. And when you develop the land, that wine tourism plays a big part of our diversified income, and it's not addressed in the MAP Act per se. And what our beneficiaries normally ask for is the development of tourism opportunities as well. Then skills development and capacity building, and then social development. We know where government funds, sometimes social development is, they look at commercial sense of vineyard plants, equipment, implements, but when it comes to the farm worker houses, that is not funded by certain entities. And that's where our organization comes in to say, we'll partner with